Deep beneath the streets of Novosibirsk lies a parallel world that most city residents are unaware of. Kilometers of secret tunnels, a bunker for Stalin, NKVD execution chambers, an underground railway, scientific laboratories. All this is not fiction, but harsh reality. For decades, the authorities concealed the truth about the underground city, built to evacuate the government and wage nuclear war. Today, we will reveal the secrets hidden in the bowels of Russia's third-largest city. What is really under the opera and ballet theater? Where do the abandoned tunnels lead? And most importantly, is this system still operational? Prepare to learn the shocking truth about underground Novosibirsk. If you enjoyed this investigation into the secrets of underground Novosibirsk, be sure to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up. We continue to reveal the hidden pages of history and the most incredible conspiracy theories. Now, let's discuss. Do you think there really is a Stalin bunker under the Novosibirsk theater? Or is it just an urban legend? Is there an underground railway connecting key locations in the city? And most importantly, are these structures still used today by the special services and the military, or have they been completely abandoned? Share your opinion in the comments. Perhaps some of you know more than what is told in this video. Your evidence can help reveal the truth. In the 1980s, when large-scale construction work began in Novosibirsk, workers unexpectedly stumbled upon something incredible. Entrances to an extensive system of underground structures were discovered beneath the city's central streets. Staircases leading dozens of meters down, brick corridors, concrete-filled passageways. All this pointed to the existence of a whole world beneath the feet of the townspeople. The official authorities remained silent, but rumors spread through the city like wildfire. What were the Soviet leaders hiding? Why was such infrastructure being created under an ordinary Siberian city? The first mentions of strange underground discoveries appeared as early as the 1950s. Builders laying communications stumbled upon walled-up entrances, strange metal doors, and tunnels of unknown purpose. But in those days, it was dangerous to talk about it. The state security system strictly monitored the dissemination of information about military and strategic facilities. Curiosity could cost you your freedom or even your life. Therefore, the workers kept quiet, covered up their discoveries, and continued their work. However, the memory of these strange discoveries was preserved in oral stories passed down from generation to generation. By the early 2000s, the situation had changed. The declassification of KGB archives, the emergence of independent researchers, and the development of the digger movement made it possible to collect the first documentary evidence. It turned out that underground Novosibirsk was not an urban legend, but a real system of structures. The tunnels stretch for kilometers. Some structures reach depths of 50 meters, and the oldest structures are over 80 years old. This is a grandiose project, comparable to Moscow's Metro 2, which is still not officially discussed. Geographically, the underground structures are concentrated in the central part of the city. Lenin Square, Komunisticheskaya Street, the area around the Novosibirsk Glavny railway station, and Akademgorodok are the main points where the entrances to the underground world are located. These areas were not chosen at random. In the 1930s, when Novosibirsk was rapidly developing as an industrial center, the city authorities received a secret assignment from Moscow. They were required to create a system of shelters in case of war and prepare the city for the possible evacuation of the government. Siberia was considered deep in the rear, out of reach of enemy aircraft. The construction was carried out by Gulag prisoners and prisoners of war. This explains the enormous scale of the work and the speed of the project's implementation. Within a few years, dozens of kilometers of tunnels, bunkers, warehouses, and underground shelters appeared under the city. Officially, these facilities were listed as bomb shelters for the population, but their real purpose was much more serious. Some of the structures were intended to house command posts, communications centers, and strategic reserves. Others were to serve as shelters for the party elite and top military leadership in the event of nuclear war. After the end of World War II, construction did not stop. On the contrary, with the onset of the Cold War, the scale of the work increased. In the 1950s and 1960s, new facilities equipped with modern life support systems were built near Novosibirsk. Air filters, autonomous generators, and months of food supplies made the underground bunkers real fortresses capable of withstanding a long siege. Some facilities were equipped with medical units and even operating rooms, indicating plans for a long stay underground. Interestingly, not all city authorities knew about the existence of these underground structures. The facilities were under the control of the KGB and the Ministry of Defense. Only individuals with the highest levels of clearance had access. Even the builders worked in small groups, each of which performed its own section of the work without knowing the overall picture. Such segmentation of information was a typical practice of the Soviet special services. It allowed them to keep projects secret for decades. To this day, not all documents about the Novosibirsk underground facilities have been declassified, which raises many questions and theories. The first photographs of underground facilities appeared only in the 1990s, when state control weakened. Diggers, urban explorers of underground passages, began to penetrate abandoned tunnels and record what they saw. The images were striking. Huge halls with concrete arches, rusty metal doors with wheel locks, radiation warning signs, moldy gas masks. It all looked like the set of a post-apocalyptic movie. But it was reality, hidden from the eyes of ordinary people for half a century. The discovery of personal belongings was of particular interest. In some rooms, documents dating back to the 1950s and 1960s had been preserved. Logbooks, equipment operating instructions, evacuation plans. All of this shed light on the true purpose of the facilities. It became clear that these were not simple bomb shelters, but a complex of structures for strategic purposes. The underground system of Novosibirsk was part of the Soviet Union's plan to prepare for a global military conflict. Local residents began to share their memories. Elderly Novosibirsk residents recounted how, as children, they saw trucks entering strange gates in the rocks or under bridges. How at night they heard muffled blows and vibrations coming from underground. How entire neighborhoods were cordoned off by the military during evacuation drills. All these testimonies came together to form a single picture. Novosibirsk was not just a large industrial center. The city was being prepared to serve as the backup capital of the USSR in the event of a nuclear war. The official authorities continued to deny the scale of underground construction. Journalists' inquiries were met with evasive answers that, yes, there were some bomb shelters from the Soviet period, but there was nothing special about them. However, the facts spoke otherwise. Independent researchers comparing eyewitness accounts, archival documents, and the results of underground expeditions, came to the conclusion that one of the largest underground complexes of the former USSR is located under Novosibirsk. In terms of scale, it is comparable to the legendary Moscow Metro 2 and may even exceed it. What is this system? What facilities does it include? Where are the main hubs of the underground world? And most importantly, are these structures still in use today? Or have they been completely abandoned? To answer these questions, we need to delve into the history of each key facility. We should start with the heart of underground Novosibirsk, a majestic building that has become a symbol of the city and, at the same time, the keeper of its darkest secrets. We are talking about the Novosibirsk State Academic Opera and Ballet Theater, known as Novat. According to numerous accounts, the main hub of the entire underground system is located beneath this building. Tunnels radiate out from the theater in all directions, connecting it to key locations in the city. But what lies there, deep underground? Is there really a bunker for Stalin under the Opera House stage? Are there underground lakes and a railway line? The answers to these questions could overturn our understanding of the real history of Novosibirsk and reveal the plans of the Soviet leadership. The Novosibirsk State Academic Opera and Ballet Theater is the largest theater building in Russia, surpassing even the Bolshoi Theater in Moscow in size. Its construction began in 1931 and continued for 10 years. The theater officially opened on May 12, 1941, just 1 month before the start of World War II. But few people know that, at the same time as the above-ground construction, large-scale underground work was also underway. A complex system of basements was created under the theater's foundation, extending several levels deep into the ground. The architectural design of the theater was developed by Moscow architect Timofey Yakovlevich Bard. However, the underground part was designed separately, and these drawings are still classified. Workers involved in the construction said that pits more than 50 meters deep were dug under the theater. The walls were concreted using technologies normally used in the construction of military fortifications. The thickness of the floors reached several meters, which is clearly excessive for ordinary theater basements. Why did the theater need such protection? The answer lies in the geopolitical situation of the 1930s. The Soviet leadership understood the inevitability of a major war. Stalin and his entourage were preparing for a long confrontation with the capitalist world. Moscow, located in the European part of the country, was vulnerable to air raids and a rapid enemy advance. A backup center for governing the country was needed, located deep in the rear. Novosibirsk was ideal for this role. The city was located beyond the Urals, far from the western borders, and had developed industry and transport hubs. According to declassified NKVD documents, in 1937, a secret decision was made to create a complex of facilities in Novosibirsk for the evacuation of the country's top leadership. The Opera and Ballet Theater, a grandiose building in the very center of the city, became the perfect cover for an underground bunker. Who would have thought that a military facility of strategic importance was hidden under a temple of art? This technique, disguising military facilities as civilian objects, was widely used by the Soviet authorities. Local old-timers tell amazing stories. In the 1940s, when the theater was already in operation, some employees noticed strange things. At night, the sounds of working mechanisms could be heard from the basements. On certain days, entire sections of the underground were closed for repairs. but no repair workers were ever seen. Instead, soldiers in uniforms without insignia appeared and prevented any attempts to approach the closed areas. Theater artists whispered among themselves that there were doors deep in the basements that could not be approached under threat of dismissal or even arrest. Of particular interest are two artificial underground lakes located beneath the theater. The official version is that they were created as firewater reservoirs. Each lake holds 6,000 cubic meters of water, which is truly impressive. In 2001, when the TSUM building caught fire a few blocks from the theater, water for extinguishing the fire was taken from these underground reservoirs. However, experts wonder, why does the theater need such enormous reserves of water? Even if we assume a major fire, such a volume is excessive. There is an alternative version of the purpose of the lakes. They could have served as part of the life support system of an underground bunker. In the event of a prolonged siege or nuclear attack, fresh water reserves are critically important. 6,000 cubic meters is enough to provide water for several hundred people for months. In addition, the water could have been used to cool generators and other equipment. The underground lakes are not just a fire safety measure, but part of an autonomous life support system for a strategic facility. Even more mysterious is the information about the railway line. According to urban legends, there are rails laid on the lowest level under the theater, leading to the Novosibirsk Glavny railway station. The distance in a straight line is about 3 kilometers. Laying an underground tunnel of this length in the 1930s and 1940s was a technically difficult but feasible task. Soviet engineers had experience in building subways and underground military facilities. Why was this railway needed? Version 1. An evacuation route. In case of danger, Stalin and members of the government could use the underground tunnel to reach the station and board a special armored train ready for immediate evacuation deep into Siberia. This is logical and consistent with the practice of creating evacuation routes for top leadership. It is known that a special armored train capable of withstanding shelling and bombing was built for Stalin. The underground railway ensured that the leader could leave the city even under complete blockade. Version 2. Cargo transportation. The Underground Railway allowed equipment, ammunition, food, and other cargo to be transported secretly between strategic facilities. This ensured the secrecy of operations and protection from enemy aerial reconnaissance. The cars could run at night, unnoticed by the city's population. Such a logistics system provided a huge advantage in wartime. There is little evidence of the existence of the railway line, but it does exist. In 2008, a group of diggers entered one of the tunnels under the theater and discovered the railroad tracks. Photos posted on the internet sparked heated debate. The authorities quickly closed access to the tunnel, stating that these were the remains of old technological tracks for transporting scenery. But experts drew attention to the type of rails. They are identical to those used in underground military facilities in the 1940s. There is evidence from veteran railroad workers. One of them, who worked at the station in the 1950s, told his grandson about secret platforms in the underground part of the station. Special trains consisting of closed cars without identification marks were sent there. Loading took place under military guard, and service personnel were not allowed to approach. The trains departed into tunnels, the direction of which was unknown. Perhaps these tunnels led to the theater. Modern researchers are trying to find concrete evidence. Ground-penetrating radar surveys are being conducted. Old drawings of city communications are being studied, and old-timers are being interviewed. The picture is gradually becoming clearer. There really is a system of tunnels under the center of Novosibirsk connecting key city locations. The Opera and Ballet Theater is the hub of this system. From here, underground corridors lead to the train station, the regional administration building, the mayor's office, and other strategically important locations. It turns out to be a real underground city with its own infrastructure. But the main question remains unanswered. What is located at the deepest point under the theater? Is there a Stalin bunker there? And if so, what condition is it in? Are the life support systems still working, or is everything abandoned and flooded? The official authorities remain silent. Access to the lower levels under the theater is closed even to employees. Security guards prevent any attempts at unauthorized entry. What are they guarding? Just old basements or an active special-purpose facility? Joseph Vissarionovich Stalin is a name that evokes mixed feelings. For some, he is a great leader who saved the country from fascism. For others, he is a bloody tyrant who destroyed millions of his compatriots. But one thing is certain: Stalin was paranoid, obsessed with his own safety. Bunkers, spare residences, and secret shelters were built for him throughout the Soviet Union. Moscow, Crimea, the Urals, Siberia, everywhere the leader might be, shelters were prepared in case of assassination attempts or war. Novosibirsk was no exception. The legend of Stalin's bunker under the Novosibirsk Opera and Ballet Theater has been passed down from generation to generation. But how much of it is true? Is there any documentary evidence, or is it just an urban myth? To figure this out, we need to look at the historical context. In the 1930s, the Soviet Union was preparing for a major war. Plans for the evacuation of the government were developed with meticulous care. Various options were considered: Kuibyshev, Sverdlovsk, Novosibirsk, Krasnoyarsk. Novosibirsk had a number of advantages. The city was far enough from the western borders to be safe from German aircraft. At the same time, it was not as remote as Krasnoyarsk or Irkutsk, which made it possible to maintain contact with the front. The Trans-Siberian Railway passed through Novosibirsk, providing rail connections to the west and east of the country. The city had a developed industry capable of meeting the needs of the evacuated government. All these factors made Novosibirsk an ideal candidate for the role of a reserve capital. In 1937, according to declassified documents, the Politburo of the Central Committee of the All-Union Communist Party, Bolsheviks, adopted a secret resolution on the preparation of Novosibirsk as a possible center of control for the country in wartime. Funding came from closed budget items, and the work was personally supervised by Lavrentiy Pavlovich Beria, then People's Commissar of Internal Affairs. At the same time, the construction of an opera and ballet theater was underway. Coincidence? Hardly. Large-scale civil construction made it possible to disguise underground military work. Eyewitness accounts point to unusual circumstances surrounding the construction of the theater. Workers said that in parallel with the main construction, secret work was being carried out, to which only trusted people with special passes were admitted. These workers descended into deep shafts under the foundation of the building and did not talk about what they were doing there. Violation of the secrecy regime was punishable by arrest. Several people who tried to talk about what they had seen disappeared without a trace. Their fate remains unknown. After the war, in the 1940s and 1950s, work continued under the theater. There is evidence that Stalin himself took an interest in the progress of construction of the Novosibirsk facility. His working notes contain references to a Siberian residence and an Eastern center. It is unclear what exactly was meant, as most of the documents have been destroyed or are still classified. However, indirect evidence paints a convincing picture. A bunker was being built under the theater, intended for the country's top leadership, and first and foremost for Stalin himself. What characteristics should such a bunker have? First, protection from a nuclear strike. By the end of the 1940s, it had become clear that the next war would be nuclear. The United States already possessed nuclear weapons and was considering plans for a preemptive strike against the Soviet Union. The bunker had to withstand a direct hit from an atomic bomb, or at least ensure survival at the epicenter of a nuclear explosion. This required enormous depth and powerful concrete slabs. According to experts, a protected bunker must be at least 50 meters deep and have walls several meters thick. The second reason was autonomy. The bunker had to support human life without connection to the outside world for a long period of time. Ventilation systems with radioactive particle filtration, autonomous power generators, water and food supplies, and a medical unit were all essential elements of a fully fledged shelter. According to the standards of the time, a government-level bunker had to ensure autonomous existence for at least 3 months. The third requirement was communications. The bunker had to be equipped with means of communication for controlling the country and the armed forces. Radio stations, telegraphs, possibly even early secure telephone systems. The command post required situation rooms where the situation on the front lines could be monitored and decisions made. All this required spacious rooms equipped with the appropriate technology. The descriptions of eyewitnesses who managed to penetrate the closed sections of the theater basements generally correspond to these requirements. They mention thick steel doors with wheel locks, like on submarines, stairs leading many meters down into pitch darkness, corridors lined with thick steel sheets, rooms with remnants of old Soviet-made electrical equipment. All this points to the military purpose of the facility. The evidence about the ventilation systems is particularly interesting. Strange ventilation shafts have been discovered in several places in the city, which are not formally connected to any known facilities. They are disguised as ordinary technical structures, but experts note their excessive power. One of these shafts is located in a park near the theater. Officially, it serves the basements of the building, but the diameter of the ventilation duct and the capacity of the installed equipment suggest that it serves a much larger facility. There is a theory that the bunker under the theater is not the only structure, but part of a whole complex of underground facilities. Stalin's bunker could have been the central element, from which tunnels branched off to other bunkers intended for members of the Politburo, the High Command, and service personnel. Such a distributed system ensured the survivability of the command center. Even if one bunker was destroyed or captured, the others would continue to function. After Stalin's death in 1953, the need for the Novosibirsk bunker may have seemed less urgent. However, the Cold War continued, and the threat of nuclear conflict did not disappear. Moreover, with each passing year, it became more and more real. The Caribbean crisis of 1962 showed how close humanity had come to the brink of disaster. In these conditions, maintaining backup command posts was vitally important. There is evidence that in the 1960s and 1970s, the modernization of underground facilities continued near Novosibirsk. Outdated equipment was replaced with new equipment, and life support systems were improved. Perhaps the bunker was re-equipped to meet the needs not of Stalin, but of the new Soviet leaders, Khrushchev, then Brezhnev. The underground infrastructure remained a strategic reserve in case of a global catastrophe. Modern researchers are trying to penetrate the mystery of the bunker. However, all attempts to obtain official information are met with a wall of silence. The FSB archives do not disclose documents on Novosibirsk facilities, citing state secrecy. The theater's management categorically denies the existence of any unusual underground structures. City authorities evade direct answers. Such secrecy only fuels interest and gives rise to new conspiracy theories. What are the authorities hiding? Could Stalin's bunker still exist and function today? The two artificial lakes under the Novosibirsk Opera and Ballet Theater are not just fire reservoirs. Behind the official version lies a much more intriguing reality. Each lake holds 6,000 cubic meters of water, for a total of 12,000 cubic meters. This volume is comparable to a small reservoir. Why does the theater need such reserves? Even the most destructive fire would not require such an amount of water. There is only one logical explanation. The lakes are intended to supply water to an underground bunker in case of prolonged autonomous operation. These reservoirs are located at different levels of the underground. The first is at a depth of about 15 meters, the second at a depth of about 30 meters. This configuration is not accidental. It provides redundancy for the water supply system. If the upper reservoir is damaged or contaminated, the lower one remains in reserve. In addition, the difference in height creates natural pressure in the system, which simplifies the supply of water without the use of pumps. This is critically important in the context of the bunker's autonomous operation. The water in the lakes is not ordinary tap water. It undergoes special purification and preservation to maintain its properties over a long period of time. In Soviet times, chemical additives were used for this purpose to prevent the growth of bacteria and algae. The water was periodically renewed and tested for suitability. This maintenance system requires constant monitoring, which indicates the importance of the facility. A simple fire reservoir would not receive such attention. There is evidence that an extensive system of pipelines has been laid from the underground lakes. They lead not only to the theater's fire hydrants, but also to other facilities deep underground. Plumbers who worked in the theater talk about strange large-diameter pipes leading to restricted areas where service personnel are not allowed. Where do these pipes lead? It is logical to assume that they lead to the bunker and related facilities. But underground lakes are only one element of the infrastructure. Even more mysterious is the legend of the railway line. It is claimed that narrow-gauge rails are laid at the lowest level under the theater, at a depth of about 50 meters. They lead to the Novosibirsk Glavny railway station, which is about 3 kilometers away. The construction of such a tunnel in the 1930s and 1940s was a technically difficult but feasible task. Soviet engineers possessed the necessary knowledge and experience. Why would an underground railway be needed? Official history does not acknowledge it, but there is circumstantial evidence. First, the type of construction of the tunnel under the theater. Geologists note that the methods used to reinforce the walls and vault are typical for transport tunnels, not for ordinary basements. Second, the findings of diggers. In 2008, a group of researchers entered one of the closed tunnels under the theater and discovered railroad tracks. The photographs caused a sensation, but the authorities quickly closed off access and declared the find to be the remains of an old technological road for transporting scenery. However, experts point to inconsistencies. The rails discovered by the diggers are of a standard not used in theater facilities. These are special rails for underground industrial roads, which were used in mines and military tunnels. The wear and tear on the rails indicates long-term intensive use. A simple scenery road would not have left such marks. In addition, the direction of the tunnel coincides with the direction to the station, which confirms the version about the connection between these two objects. There is testimony from a former railway worker who worked at the Novosibirsk station in the 1950s. He said that under the main platforms of the station there is a secret level with additional tracks. Special trains were sent there, usually consisting of only a few closed cars without any identifying marks. Loading and unloading took place under strict military guard. Personnel were forbidden to approach, let alone ask questions. Where did these trains go? The old man claimed that they went into tunnels whose direction was kept secret. Logic suggests the purpose of the Underground Railway. First, it was an evacuation route for the top leadership. In case of danger, Stalin and his entourage could reach the station through the tunnel and board an armored train ready for immediate departure. This ensured the speed and secrecy of the evacuation. None of the potential opponents or conspirators would know how the leader left the city. Secondly, it was a logistical channel. The underground road could be used to transport cargo, weapons, ammunition, food, equipment, everything necessary for the functioning of the bunker and related facilities. The possible connection with other underground facilities in the city is also interesting. The railway tunnel could have had branches leading to the buildings of the regional administration, the mayor's office, military district headquarters, and other strategically important points. This would have created an entire network of underground communications, allowing people and cargo to be moved quickly while remaining invisible to outside observation. It is a veritable underground state with its own transport system. Modern attempts to verify the existence of the railway tunnel have been met with resistance from the authorities. Any research in the area of the theater and the train station is strictly prohibited. The official explanation is that it poses a danger to the structures of buildings and the safety of people. But critics ask, if there is no tunnel, why all the secrecy? Why not just show that there are ordinary basements under the theater and no railways there? The silence of the authorities breeds suspicion. There are indirect indications of activity in the underground. Local residents living in houses near the theater sometimes hear strange sounds coming from underground. A dull rumble, reminiscent of heavy machinery or a passing train. These sounds usually occur late at night when the city is asleep. Coincidence? Or is the underground infrastructure still in use? Perhaps something more serious is going on there under the guise of maintenance of old communications? Conspiracy theorists go further. They claim that an underground railway connects Novosibirsk with other cities in Siberia, Tomsk, Kemerovo, Barnaul. Allegedly, there is a whole system of intercity underground tunnels that allows travel throughout the region without reaching the surface. It seems like science fiction, but the scale of underground construction in the USSR was truly colossal. Many facilities are still classified, and their true purpose is unknown. Let's get back to the facts. Underground lakes exist. This has been proven. Their purpose is officially explained as fire protection, but the scale is excessive. Rails have been found under the theater. This has been documented. Their purpose is explained as decorative, but expert analysis contradicts this. Secret cargo operations at the station have been confirmed by witnesses. All of this adds up to a convincing picture. There really is an underground transportation system under Novosibirsk that connects key locations in the city. Its creation was part of a grand plan to prepare for global war. And it's possible that this system is still in operation today. Komunisticheskaya Street in the center of Novosibirsk looks like an ordinary city thoroughfare. Residential buildings, shops, offices, nothing betrays the dark history hidden beneath the asphalt. But local old-timers know that this street holds terrible secrets from the Soviet era. The NKVD buildings were located here, and horrific things took place in their basements. Thousands of people were tortured and shot here. And according to eyewitness accounts, there are underground tunnels here through which the bodies of the executed were removed. Before the start of the Great Patriotic War, Komunisticheskaya Street was home to the main building of the NKVD administration for the Novosibirsk region. It was a gloomy red brick building that inspired fear with its very appearance. The city's residents avoided it, afraid of even accidentally attracting the attention of the agency's employees. It was easy to end up in the NKVD's torture chambers. All it took was a careless word, an anonymous tip, or just an unfortunate turn of events. Few managed to get out alive. The period of the Great Terror in 1937-1938 was the peak of the repressions. In Novosibirsk, as throughout the country, NKVD troikas operated, extrajudicial bodies that handed down sentences without the right to defense or appeal. Hundreds of people were arrested every night. Prisons were overcrowded. The interrogation rooms became a living hell. Torture was used everywhere. The security services believed that a confession could be extracted from anyone. Beatings, sleep deprivation, suspension, mock executions. The executioner's arsenal was extensive. Surviving prisoners described the layout of the NKVD building's basements. It was a veritable labyrinth of corridors, cells, and special rooms. Some cells were narrow boxes where a person could neither sit nor lie down. Others were flooded with water up to the knees, causing frostbite and illness. Still others were in complete darkness, depriving prisoners of their sense of time. The goal was one: to break a person's will, to force them to sign any confession, even for crimes they did not commit. But the most terrible thing was on the lowest levels. The execution chambers were located deep underground so that the sounds of gunshots would not be heard outside. The walls of these rooms were lined with wood, impregnated with a special compound to absorb blood. After each series of executions, the chambers were washed with water from hoses, and the blood drained into special drains. It was a conveyor belt of death, operating around the clock during peak periods of repression. Those executed were buried in secret. Relatives were told that the condemned had been sentenced to 10 years in a labor camp without the right to correspond. In reality, this was a euphemism for execution. The bodies were taken away at night, and the burial sites were kept strictly secret. For many years, no one knew where the remains of the victims of terror were buried. It was only in the 1990s, after the archives were declassified, that some of the mass burial sites near Novosibirsk became known. But how were the bodies taken out of the city center unnoticed? Trucks traveling through the night streets with suspicious cargo could have attracted attention. This is where the theory of underground tunnels comes in. According to the testimony of former NKVD employees questioned in the 1960s, there was an extensive system of underground passages beneath the building on Komunisticheskaya Street. One of the tunnels led to the Ob River, located about 2 kilometers from the building. The bodies were loaded onto carts and transported by rail to the riverbank, where they were thrown into the water or buried in hidden places. This theory is supported by circumstantial evidence. Fishermen who fished on the Ob River in the 1930s and 1940s told of strange finds. Sometimes human remains were found in their nets. Local residents found items belonging to prisoners on the shore, such as buttons from prison uniforms and scraps of documents. All this indicated that the river was used to dispose of the bodies of those who had been executed. There is also evidence of mass graves in the forests near Novosibirsk. One such place is the Zolotaya Niva tract, located a few kilometers from the city. In the 1990s, exhumations were carried out there, and the remains of hundreds of people shot during the years of terror were discovered. Pathological examination showed that most of the victims were killed by shots to the back of the head, the standard method of execution used by the NKVD. The age of the remains corresponded to the 1930s and 1940s. But how were the bodies transported to Zolotaya Niva? The distance from the city center is about 15 kilometers. The truck theory seems logical, but there is an alternative explanation. What if there was an underground tunnel leading from the city center to its outskirts? The construction of such a tunnel is technically possible, although it requires enormous resources. But for the Soviet system, which did not consider costs, this was not a problem. Local diggers have repeatedly tried to find the entrance to the tunnels under Komunisticheskaya Street. The NKVD building has not survived. It was demolished in the 1980s, and a residential complex was built in its place. However, the underground part may have remained intact. During the construction of the new building, workers did indeed discover strange voids and walled-up passages. But all this was quickly concreted over, and the workers were strictly forbidden to talk about their findings. In 2005, a group of enthusiasts obtained permission to explore the basements of one of the old buildings on Komunisticheskaya Street, located next to the former NKVD building. A walled-up door was discovered in the basement. When the wall was partially dismantled, a corridor leading deep into the building was revealed. It was not possible to walk through it. After 20 meters, the path was blocked by a collapse, but the direction of the corridor pointed towards the Ob River. This indirectly confirmed the version about a tunnel to the river. Attempts to obtain official permission for further research were rejected. The authorities stated that the excavations could threaten the stability of buildings and the safety of people. Researchers suspect that the real reason for the ban is different. Perhaps the authorities do not want the scale of the NKVD's crimes to be made public. Or perhaps the tunnels are still in use, and their declassification is undesirable for security reasons. There is another grim detail. The archives contain documents on the expenditure of ammunition by the NKVD administration in the Novosibirsk region. The number of cartridges used is estimated at tens of thousands. this is much more than the official number of executions. Where did the rest of the victims go? Perhaps many of the graves have not yet been discovered. The bodies could have been dumped into abandoned mines, swamps, or rivers. Underground tunnels made this terrible work easier. Modern Novosibirsk residents walk along Komunisticheskaya Street, unaware of the secrets hidden beneath their feet. But the memory of the victims must not be lost. Researchers continue their work, trying to piece together the full picture of the repressions. Every new piece of evidence, every document found, brings us closer to the truth. And perhaps one day, it will be possible to penetrate the underground passages beneath Komunisticheskaya Street and finally uncover their terrible secrets. For now, the question remains: where does the tunnel to the Ob River lead, and what else is hidden in its depths? The NKVD execution chambers on Komunisticheskaya Street were only part of a ramified system of death. But there were other places of execution about which even less is known. One such place was presumably located directly on the banks of the Ob River. According to eyewitness accounts, there was a camouflaged entrance to an underground bunker where executions were also carried out. The advantage of this location was obvious. The bodies could be immediately thrown into the river without the risk of transporting them through the city. Geographically, this place was located in the area of the modern embankment, not far from the Oktyabrski Bridge. In the 1930s, this area was a sparsely populated outskirts of the city, covered with thickets and ravines. It was an ideal place for secret operations. Local fishermen said that on certain nights, trucks with their headlights off would appear there. People in uniform would unload something heavy and throw it into the river. Curious onlookers were driven away under threat of arrest. Witnesses remained silent for decades, fearing repression. There is a legend about a tunnel connecting the NKVD building on Komunisticheskaya Street with this place on the banks of the Ob River. The length of such a tunnel would be about 2 to 3 kilometers. The construction of such a structure in the 1930s required significant resources, but it was quite feasible. The Soviet government spared no expense on projects related to the security of the regime. The tunnel could have been used not only to remove bodies, but also to secretly transport prisoners, documents, and valuables. Technically, the tunnel would have had to be built at a considerable depth so as not to intersect with city utilities. The probable depth of the foundation was about 20 to 30 meters. At this depth, the soil is stable, and the risk of collapse is minimal. The tunnel most likely had concrete walls and a vault reinforced with metal structures. A narrow-gauge railway with hand-pushed or small electric locomotive-pulled wagons could have been used to transport cargo. In the 1950s, after Stalin's death and the partial rehabilitation of victims of repression, some former NKVD employees testified about their activities. One of them mentioned the existence of an evacuation tunnel under the center of Novosibirsk. He did not reveal the exact purpose of the tunnel, citing ongoing secrecy. But from the context, it was clear that he was talking about removing something or someone from the NKVD building to the river. This indirectly confirms the version about a tunnel for transporting the bodies of those executed. In the 1930s and 1940s, the Ob River was much fuller than it is now. The current was strong, and bodies thrown into the water were carried far downstream. Many of them floated up a few days or weeks later, dozens of kilometers from where they had been thrown in. The authorities explained the discoveries as accidents, suicides, or crimes. The systematic nature of these discoveries was not publicized. However, local residents understood what was really going on. Another interesting theory is that the tunnel to the Ob River was used not only to remove bodies, but also for other purposes. During the war, important documents and valuables could be evacuated through it in case of a threat of the city being captured. The river provided an additional escape route. It was possible to sail away, bypassing blocked land roads. Perhaps there was a pier for boats or small ships at the tunnel exit. In the 1990s, when control over information weakened, publications about underground Novosibirsk appeared. Journalists interviewed old-timers, studied archives, and talked to diggers. The picture gradually came together. In addition to the bunkers under the theater and the tunnels under Komunisticheskaya Street, there was a network of smaller underground structures scattered throughout the city. Some of them were connected to each other, forming an underground transport network. One of these structures was located in the area of modern Krasny Prospect. During repairs to the heating main in 2003, workers stumbled upon a walled-up entrance to a spacious underground corridor. When the wall was dismantled, a tunnel about 3 meters high and 2 meters wide was discovered. The walls were lined with brick, and the floor was concrete. The tunnel went in both directions from the place of discovery. In one direction, it led towards Lenin Square, in the other, towards the river. The attempt to walk through the tunnel ended quickly. After 50 meters, the path was blocked by a massive metal door with a lock. It was not possible to break it down. In addition, representatives of certain security services appeared, who stated that the facility was under their control and demanded that we leave the tunnel immediately. The entrance was bricked up again, and that was the end of the investigation. But the fact of the tunnel's existence was recorded. What is behind the metal door? Perhaps an active facility used by the special services or the military. Perhaps abandoned premises of historical value. Or, most likely, part of the very system of tunnels connecting key points of the city. The authorities prefer not to comment on these findings, which only increases public interest. There is a theory that the entire system of underground structures in Novosibirsk was designed as a single complex. The central hub was a bunker under the opera and ballet theater. From there, tunnels led to government buildings, the train station, the river, and industrial facilities. This network made it possible to control the city and the region even under enemy occupation or in the event of nuclear war. The leadership could move underground, remaining out of reach of the enemy. This theory is confirmed by data on the scale of underground construction in Novosibirsk. There are more than 300 officially registered bomb shelters in the city. Their total capacity exceeds 200,000 people. But this is only the official part. How many secret facilities remain classified? According to independent experts, the real capacity of underground Novosibirsk may be several times greater than the official data. The Ob River, which flows through the city center, played a key role in this system. It provided water to underground facilities, served as a transport route, and was used to conceal secret operations. The tunnel to the river was a vital element of the infrastructure, and perhaps it still functions today, providing a link between the underground world and the surface. But it is impossible for an ordinary person to get there. The entrances are carefully hidden and guarded. What is there, deep beneath the waters of the Ob? With the start of the Cold War, the threat of nuclear conflict became a reality. The Soviet leadership realized that in the event of war with the US and NATO, cities would be subjected to atomic bombing. It was necessary to ensure the protection of the population and the preservation of administrative structures. A program to build bomb shelters was launched throughout the country. Novosibirsk, as a major industrial and transportation center, received special attention. The scale of underground construction in the 1950s and 1960s was enormous. Officially, more than 300 bomb shelters of various capacities were built in the city. Some were designed for several dozen people, while others could accommodate thousands of people. Bomb shelters were located under residential buildings, factories, schools, hospitals, and administrative buildings. Virtually every large structure of the Soviet period had an underground protected section. This was a requirement of wartime urban planning regulations. The design of bomb shelters varied depending on the class of protection. The simplest ones were fortified basements with supplies of water and food. They protected against debris from destroyed buildings and partially against radiation, but would not have withstood a direct bomb hit. More sophisticated shelters were built at a depth of 10 to 15 meters with thick concrete ceilings. They were equipped with air filtration systems, autonomous generators, medical stations, and bathrooms. The highest category of bomb shelters was intended for party officials and military commanders. They were located at a depth of 30 to 50 meters and were veritable underground cities. The concrete slabs were several meters thick, providing protection from even a powerful direct hit. Life support systems allowed people to stay underground for up to 3 months without contact with the surface. Food, water, and medicine supplies were carefully calculated and regularly replenished. One such shelter was located under the building of the Regional Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union on Lenin Square. According to former employees of the Regional Committee, there were several levels in the basement of the building. The upper levels were used as offices, archives, and warehouses. The lower levels were closed to ordinary employees. Special elevators with combination locks led there. Only the regional party leadership had access to this area. What was there remained a secret. In 2010, when the former Regional Committee building was transferred to new owners, an inventory of the premises was carried out. It was discovered that some of the underground premises were still classified and not included in the General Register. Representatives of the FSB stated that these facilities were strategic and remained under the control of the special services. Thus, even 20 years after the collapse of the USSR, some Soviet bunkers continue to function. The fate of bomb shelters under industrial enterprises is interesting. Novosibirsk was a major center of the defense industry. Factories produced aviation equipment, electronics, and devices for military needs. Protected production facilities were built under each large factory. In the event of war, production was to continue underground, despite the bombing of the surface. This ensured the continuity of military production. The Valery Chkalov Aviation Plant is one of the oldest enterprises in the city. Under its territory is an extensive system of underground structures. Some of them are officially recognized as bomb shelters and production areas. But there is evidence of deeper levels, accessible only to employees with special clearance. Factory workers talk about elevators going down to unknown depths and underground workshops where top-secret products were manufactured. The ventilation system for these underground facilities was so powerful that the air ducts extended far beyond the factory grounds. Some ventilation shafts were located in forest park areas several kilometers from the factory. This was done for camouflage purposes. The enemy, observing from the air, could not determine the exact location of the underground facilities by the ventilation outlets. This level of secrecy indicates the strategic importance of these structures. After the collapse of the USSR, many bomb shelters were abandoned. Their maintenance required significant funds, which bankrupt enterprises and budgetary organizations did not have. Ventilation systems were shut down, food and medicine supplies were removed or simply left to rot. Entrances were bricked up or locked, and the keys were eventually lost. Dozens, perhaps hundreds, of bomb shelters turned into abandoned underground structures, slowly decaying from time and moisture. Diggers began exploring these sites in the 1990s and 2000s. The photographs and videos from the abandoned bomb shelters are striking. Huge halls with concrete vaults, kilometers of corridors, rooms littered with gas masks and respirators, rusty metal doors, Cold War posters, instructions on what to do in case of a nuclear alert. It all looks like the set of a post-apocalyptic film. But these are real structures, ready to take people in the event of a nuclear war. Some bomb shelters have found new uses. They have been converted into warehouses, garages, sports halls, and nightclubs. Stable temperatures, no street noise, and sturdy construction make these underground spaces attractive for commercial use. In Novosibirsk, there are several bars and restaurants located in former bomb shelters. Visitors sipping beer in a cozy underground hall are not always aware that they are in a structure built to save them from a nuclear apocalypse. But a significant portion of bomb shelters remain closed. This is especially true for facilities associated with government agencies and defense enterprises. Formally, they are on the balance sheet and must be kept in readiness. But it is impossible to check their actual condition. Access is closed and information is classified. Perhaps some of them are indeed ready for use. Perhaps they have long been flooded and are unusable. Or perhaps something is happening there that the authorities prefer not to talk about. There is a theory that some of the Cold War bomb shelters were modernized in the 2000s. With the growth of geopolitical tensions and the resumption of confrontation between Russia and the West, civil defense issues have once again become relevant. The state is allocating funds for the restoration and modernization of protective structures. Novosibirsk, as a large city and industrial center, is on the priority list. Perhaps hidden work is underway under the city in preparation for a new Cold War. Novosibirsk Glavny railway station is one of the largest transport hubs in Russia. Every day, tens of thousands of passengers and hundreds of trains pass through it. The majestic station building, constructed in the 1950s, has become a symbol of the city. But few people know that another world is hidden beneath the station, a system of underground structures whose purpose has not yet been fully revealed. Tunnels, platforms, bunkers, all of this exists deep underground, inaccessible to ordinary passengers. The history of the underground station began in the 1930s, when Novosibirsk was becoming a major transportation hub in Siberia. The Trans-Siberian Railway passed through the city, connecting the European part of the country with the Far East. The strategic importance of this route cannot be overestimated. In the event of war, troops, ammunition, and food were to be transported along the Trans-Siberian Railway. Losing control of the railway would have been catastrophic. The Soviet command understood the vulnerability of ground infrastructure. Train stations, tracks, and railways could all be easily destroyed by enemy aircraft. It was necessary to create a backup system that could function even if the ground structures were destroyed. This is how the idea of an underground railway hub was born. Additional platforms, tracks, and control rooms were built under the main station. In the event of a bombing, train traffic was to continue underground. Construction was carried out in parallel with the construction of the new station building. Officially, the underground part was explained as a technical area for servicing tracks and housing communications. But the scale of the work hinted at a different purpose. Excavations were dug to a depth of 30 meters. Entire halls the size of a football field were concreted, and rail tracks were laid. All this required enormous financial and material costs. Testimonies from railway workers who worked at the station in the 1950s and 1960s point to the existence of restricted areas. Some platforms and tracks were under strict military guard. Special trains were sent there, often at night. The cars were closed, and the windows were curtained. Service personnel were forbidden to approach. Who or what was transported by these trains remained a secret. One version is that the underground station was used to evacuate senior leadership. If Novosibirsk was indeed being prepared as a backup capital of the USSR, then the station became a key link in the evacuation system. Members of the government could travel through underground tunnels from the bunker under the theater to a secret platform at the station. There, an armored train awaited them, ready to depart immediately for a safe location. The entire operation would have been carried out secretly, without the risk of being noticed. The second version, the underground station served as a transshipment base for strategic cargo. During the war, valuables evacuated from the European part of the country were transported through Novosibirsk. Gold reserves, museum treasures, secret documents, and equipment from defense factories were all temporarily stored in the station's underground vaults and then sent further east. The underground location provided protection from air raids. The third version, the underground station was part of a secret transport network connecting strategic objects in the city. Tunnels led from the station to the theater, to the buildings of the regional administration, to industrial enterprises, and possibly even to military bases outside the city. This network allowed troops, equipment, and cargo to be moved quickly while remaining invisible to outside observation. Such a system provided a huge advantage in wartime. In the 1990s, journalists were given the opportunity to partially explore the underground rooms of the station. They discovered vast halls that were clearly not used for technical purposes. The size and design of these halls corresponded to train platforms. Even the remains of the railroad tracks were preserved, although they had been partially dismantled. However, it was not possible to penetrate beyond a certain level. Massive metal doors blocked the way, and FSB representatives politely but firmly asked everyone to leave the facility. Local diggers made attempts to penetrate the closed areas. One of the groups found an entrance to a tunnel located a few hundred meters from the station. The tunnel led in the direction of the station complex. After walking about a kilometer, the explorers came to a fork. One passage went deep and up, obviously to the station. The other passage continued horizontally, in the direction of the city center. It was not possible to go any further. Both passages were blocked by grills with locks. The connection between the station and the Ob River is also interesting. The distance from the station to the river is about 1 kilometer. There is a suggestion that there is an underground tunnel connecting the station to the riverbank. This would provide an additional route for evacuation or supply by water transport. During the war, river transport remained important, especially in Siberia, where rivers are natural transport arteries. The current state of the underground station is unknown. Officially, most of the underground premises are not in use and are abandoned. But station employees sometimes talk about strange things. At night, sounds can be heard coming from the closed sectors. The hum of machinery, the clang of metal, sometimes even voices. Security guards avoid certain corridors, citing a bad atmosphere. What is going on there? Perhaps it is just acoustic effects in empty rooms. Or perhaps someone is using the underground for unknown purposes. There is a theory that the underground station is part of a system of facilities that are still controlled by the special services. In the 2000s, against the backdrop of a growing terrorist threat, the state tightened control over critical infrastructure facilities. Railway junctions are on the priority list. Perhaps the station houses command posts for anti-terrorist units, warehouses for special equipment, and secret communication nodes. Another version is related to civil defense. In the event of an emergency, whether it be a military conflict, a man-made disaster, or a natural disaster, the underground rooms of the station can be used as a shelter for the population. The capacity of these rooms is estimated at several thousand people. Autonomous life support systems, water and food supplies, all of this could have been preserved or restored as part of civil defense programs. The mystery of the underground station remains unsolved. The authorities are in no hurry to disclose information, citing security concerns. Independent researchers encounter obstacles and restrictions, but interest in the topic continues unabated. Each new discovery and each eyewitness account adds pieces to the overall picture. And perhaps one day, the full truth about what lies beneath the Novosibirsk station will be revealed. For now, we can only guess. The Novosibirsk Metro is a relatively young transport system. The first line opened in 1985, making it one of the latest metros in the USSR. But plans for its construction existed much earlier, back in the 1950s. For a long time, the project was postponed due to the complexity of geological conditions and lack of funding. However, when construction finally began, the scale of the work was impressive. This raises the question, was the metro built solely for civilian needs, or did it have a dual purpose? The depth of the Novosibirsk stations is considerable. The deepest stations are located 20 to 25 meters below the surface. For comparison, there are stations in the Moscow metro that are more than 80 meters deep, but this is due to the terrain. There are no such natural reasons in Novosibirsk. The city is located on relatively flat terrain. So why such a depth? The official explanation is geological features of the soil. But experts point out that it would have been possible to lay the lines shallower at a lower cost. An alternative version, the deep foundation, is due to civil defense requirements. The metro was built at the height of the Cold War, when the threat of nuclear conflict was real. The metro stations were to be used as bomb shelters in case of a nuclear attack. A depth of 25 meters and powerful concrete ceilings provide protection from shock waves and radiation. The capacity of the stations allows tens of thousands of people to take shelter. The ventilation systems are equipped with filters to clean the air of radioactive particles. Each station of the Novosibirsk metro has sealed doors separating the platform from the tunnels. They are normally open, but in an emergency, they can be closed, turning the station into an autonomous shelter. Water and food supplies are stored in special storage facilities. Medical stations are equipped with the necessary medicines. The toilets and sanitation systems are designed for long-term use by large numbers of people. None of this is typical for a conventional transport facility. There is evidence of additional levels beneath some stations. Metro employees talk about stairs leading down from the platforms, behind doors marked service rooms. No entry for unauthorized persons. Where do these stairs lead? The official version is that they lead to technical rooms for ventilation, power supply, and water drainage equipment. But some employees hint at more. Allegedly, there are backup command posts connected to the citywide civil defense system. The Lenin Square station is of particular interest. It is located in the very center of the city, directly under the square where the Opera and Ballet Theater, City Hall, and regional administration buildings are located. The station opened in 2005 as part of the second metro line. However, plans for its construction existed as early as the 1980s, and preliminary work was carried out even earlier. It is possible that, under the guise of building a metro station, a communications hub was created between existing underground facilities. If we recall the legend about the bunker under the theater, the Ploshchad Lenina station is located in close proximity to this facility. It is logical to assume that there is an underground connection between them. A tunnel or passage connecting the metro station to the bunker would allow people to be evacuated using metro trains. A metro train can carry about 1,000 people. Several trains could quickly take those in the bunker to a safer place. There is also a version about a secret metro line that is not marked on official maps. Allegedly, a tunnel leads from one of the central stations to a closed military facility. This line is used to transport military and special services personnel, as well as secret cargo. There is no evidence of the existence of such a line, but rumors persist among metro employees. They refer to cases when trains passed through the main tunnels without stopping at stations and without being marked on the schedule. The Moscow experience confirms that secret metro lines do indeed exist. The famous Metro 2, a system of government lines connecting the Kremlin with key facilities in Moscow, is a reality confirmed by many sources. If a secret metro was built in Moscow, why couldn't it have been built in Novosibirsk, the backup capital? The scale may have been smaller, but the principle is the same. A system of underground passages for evacuation and control in a crisis situation. Diggers have repeatedly tried to find entrances to unofficial metro tunnels. Some claim to have discovered bricked-up passages in the walls of tunnels between stations. Photographs show sections of walls that differ in the color of the concrete, as if there had been a passageway that was later bricked up. But it is impossible to check what is behind these sections without destroying the structure, which is illegal and dangerous. The metro authorities categorically deny the existence of any secret tunnels. The layout of future metro lines is also interesting. According to the master plan, the metro should develop in the direction of Akademgorodok and Berdsk, but some sections of the planned lines pass through areas with low population density. From the point of view of transport efficiency, this is illogical. But when you consider the location of military facilities and strategic enterprises, the picture changes. Perhaps the metro is being built not only to transport passengers, but also to provide communication between important facilities in case of an emergency. There is a theory that the Novosibirsk metro is integrated into the city's overall underground infrastructure system. The metro tunnels are connected to older tunnels, forming a single network. This ensures the flexibility and survivability of the system. Even if some of the tunnels are destroyed or flooded, the rest will continue to function. This distributed architecture is typical of military and strategic facilities. After the events of the 2010s, when terrorists carried out a series of attacks on subways in various countries, subway security became a priority. The Novosibirsk metro has stepped up security measures. CCTV cameras have been installed everywhere. Police and Russian National Guard officers patrol the stations, and searches are carried out at the entrances. But there are suspicions that something more is hidden behind these anti-terrorism measures. Perhaps the authorities are preparing to use the metro as an evacuation or shelter system in the event of a serious crisis. The Novosibirsk metro is not just a transport system. It is part of an extensive underground infrastructure created to ensure the functioning and management of the city in extreme conditions. Deep stations, powerful structures, life support systems, all of this hints at the dual purpose of the facility. And while the authorities remain silent, we can only speculate about what other secrets underground Novosibirsk hides. Novosibirsk is not only an administrative center, but also a major industrial city. Dozens of plants and factories have been operating here since before the war. Many of them were related to the defense industry and were classified. Underground production facilities, warehouses, and shelters were built beneath these enterprises. But in addition to the operating factories, there were also half-forgotten objects, old mines, abandoned basements, and catacombs of unknown origin. All of them form another layer of underground Novosibirsk. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, minerals were mined within the city limits and its surroundings. Coal, clay for brick production, limestone, all of this was mined in mines and quarries. Many mines were abandoned after they were worked out, their entrances filled in or walled up. But the underground workings did not disappear. They remained in the earth, forming a system of tunnels and voids. Some of these old mines were later used by the Soviet authorities for their own needs. One such mine was located in the area of the modern Zeltsovsky district. In the 1930s, limestone was mined there for construction. When the reserves were depleted, the mine was officially closed. But in the 1940s, activity there suddenly resumed. Local residents saw trucks entering a camouflaged entrance and soldiers guarding the perimeter. There was no official explanation. After the war, the mine was finally closed, and the entrance was filled in. But old-timers claim that there was a secret ammunition depot or even an underground factory there. In the 2000s, diggers tried to find this facility. Using old maps and interviewing elderly residents of the area, they determined its approximate location. In a forest park area, they discovered a sinkhole, indicating the presence of voids below. The attempt to descend ended in failure. After a few meters, the path was blocked by debris. However, they managed to find several artifacts: rusty metal structures clearly of Soviet manufacture, fragments of mine carts, and cartridges for Mosin rifles. All this confirmed that the mine was used during wartime. Another interesting site is the basements of an old brewery in the city center. The brewery operated during the Tsarist era and was nationalized and expanded during the Soviet era. Extensive basements were dug under the brewery building to store beer and raw materials. But after the brewery closed in the 1990s, the basements acquired a grim reputation. Local residents told of strange sounds coming from there, and of people who disappeared after going down into the cellars out of curiosity. A group of diggers explored these cellars in 2007. It turned out that the system of underground rooms was much more extensive than expected. In addition to the factory's production halls, tunnels were discovered that were clearly older. The walls were made of brick, typical of the 19th century. The tunnels led in different directions from the factory, one of them leading towards the Ob River. The purpose of these tunnels is unclear. Perhaps they were used to transport goods, or perhaps they were part of the city's communications system. But the strangest thing was that a walled-up door was discovered in one of the tunnels. The brickwork was new, clearly from the Soviet era. There was an echo behind the door, indicating a large space. Attempts to find out from the city authorities what was there were unsuccessful. No official response was given. Diggers tried to dismantle the masonry, but were stopped by security guards who appeared out of nowhere. The site was quickly closed, and the entrance to the factory basements was bricked up with concrete. What is hidden there? There is a theory that the old underground structures of Novosibirsk were integrated into the Soviet system. Instead of building everything from scratch, the authorities used existing tunnels and catacombs, expanding and modernizing them. This saved time and resources. Old mines were turned into warehouses and shelters. The basements of factories were connected to other facilities by new tunnels. The result was a multi-layered system of different eras of construction. The history of the underground passages of Novosibirsk State University is also interesting. The main university building was constructed in the 1960s in Akademgorodok. Basements and technical rooms were equipped under the building. But students and teachers talk about the existence of additional levels that are closed off. Allegedly, there were laboratories where secret research was conducted during the Soviet era. After the collapse of the USSR, the laboratories were mothballed, but the equipment was left in place. In 2010, students discovered a hidden door in one of the university's basements. Behind it was a staircase leading down. Going down, they found themselves in a corridor with laboratory doors. The rooms still contained old equipment, instruments, shelves with reagents, documents. One of the documents was dated 1978 and was marked top secret. The students photographed their findings, but soon the university administration learned of the intrusion. The culprits were expelled, and the entrance to the underground was bricked up. Catacombs and abandoned underground facilities pose many dangers. Old structures can collapse at any moment. Toxic gases accumulate in some rooms. Flooded areas pose a risk of drowning. But the greatest danger is getting lost in the labyrinth of tunnels. There are known cases of diggers disappearing in the underground passages. Some managed to get out on their own after a few days, exhausted and frightened. Others were found by search parties, and some never returned. In 2015, a young man went missing after descending into the basements of an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. His friends reported him missing, and a search began. Rescuers searched the accessible parts of the basements, but found no traces. After a week, the search was called off. A month later, his body was found by chance in a distant tunnel that the searchers had not reached. An examination showed that the young man had gotten lost, his flashlight had run out, and he had died of hypothermia and dehydration. This case served as a warning to lovers of underground expeditions. The authorities periodically conduct operations to clean up the underground passages. They wall up entrances, install grates, and hang warning signs. But it is almost impossible to stop the diggers. They find new entrances, break locks, and bypass obstacles. Interest in the underground world continues unabated. Everyone wants to find something unique, uncover a secret, become a pioneer. And underground Novosibirsk offers endless opportunities for exploration. Catacombs and forgotten factories are the living history of the city. Artifacts from different eras have been preserved here, from pre-revolutionary times to the late USSR. Ancient tools, documents, household items, all this awaits its explorers. But behind the romance of adventure lie real dangers and secrets that are perhaps better left untouched. After all, some doors are closed for a reason. Akademgorodok is a world-class scientific center located 20 kilometers from the center of Novosibirsk. It was founded in the 1950s as a city of scientists, where the best minds of the Soviet Union were to live and work. Institutes of physics, mathematics, chemistry, biology, dozens of scientific organizations were concentrated in a small area. But science required more than just laboratories on the surface. Many experiments were conducted deep underground, in specially equipped underground complexes. The reasons for building underground laboratories varied. Some experiments required protection from external influences such as vibrations, electromagnetic fields, and temperature fluctuations. Deep foundations ensured stable conditions. Other research was so secret that it could not be conducted on the surface. Nuclear physics, the development of new types of weapons, biological experiments, all of this required maximum secrecy. Underground laboratories guaranteed confidentiality. The Budker Institute of Nuclear Physics is one of the leading scientific centers in Akademgorodok. Particle accelerators were created here, and experiments in high-energy physics were conducted. Some of the equipment was located underground. Officially, this was explained by the need for radiation protection and measurement accuracy. But there is evidence of deeper levels where top-secret work was carried out. A former employee of the Institute who worked there in the 1970s spoke about the existence of a restricted area. Only scientists with special KGB clearance were allowed there. Access was via a special elevator that descended much deeper than the main underground facilities. He did not know what was there. He did not have clearance. But there were rumors of experiments related to military developments. Perhaps components for nuclear weapons were being created there, or new physical principles applicable to military technologies were being researched. The Institute of Cytology and Genetics also had underground laboratories. Biological research during the Soviet period was often dual-purpose. Officially, fundamental problems of genetics and selection were studied. Unofficially, work was carried out that could have military applications. Biological weapons, genetically modified organisms, experiments with the human genome, all of this was in the sphere of interest of Soviet science. The underground location of the laboratories ensured biosafety and secrecy. Local residents of Akademgorodok tell strange stories. In the 1960s and 1970s, underground tremors and rumblings coming from beneath the ground were sometimes heard. Officially, this was explained as testing of scientific equipment. But some believed that low-power underground nuclear explosions were being carried out there. The USSR did indeed conduct underground nuclear tests, but officially they were carried out at test sites in Kazakhstan and Novaya Zemlya. Could there have been secret tests under Akademgorodok? There is no direct evidence, but circumstantial evidence gives pause for thought. In the 1990s, when funding for science was sharply reduced, many underground facilities were mothballed. The equipment was dismantled or left in place, and the entrances were bricked up. Some of the premises were flooded with groundwater, but some facilities continued to operate, receiving funding from closed items in the military budget. What kind of research is being conducted there now is unknown. Access is closed, and information is classified. Students and graduate students at Novosibirsk State University, the main university in Akademgorodok, talk about the legend of underground tunnels. Allegedly, there is a network of tunnels underground, connecting all the institutes in Akademgorodok. This allowed scientists to move between facilities without going above ground. In Siberian winters, this would have been very convenient. In addition, the tunnels ensured secrecy. Equipment and materials could be transported without attracting attention. There is little evidence to support this legend, but there is some. In the 2000s, during the renovation of one of the institute buildings, a walled-up entrance to a tunnel was discovered. Behind the wall was a corridor about 2 meters wide and 2.5 meters high, leading to a neighboring institute. Passage through it was not permitted, and the entrance was walled up again. But the existence of the tunnel was confirmed. Perhaps there are indeed many of them, and they form an underground network of Akademgorodok. Another legend is associated with the underground city. It is claimed that there is a whole complex of premises under Akademgorodok where scientists and their families were to take refuge in the event of a nuclear war. This is logical. The country's scientific potential had to be preserved. The bunker could accommodate several thousand people and was equipped with everything necessary for long-term autonomous existence. Laboratories, libraries, living quarters, warehouses, an entire city underground, ready to survive the apocalypse. Indirect confirmation of this is the scale of construction in Akademgorodok in the 1950s and 1960s. The volume of soil excavated exceeded the needs of above-ground buildings. Where did this soil go? Most likely, it was used to form the mounds and hills that surround Akademgorodok. But there was so much soil that it cannot be explained solely by the construction of basements. This means that extensive structures were built underground. The current state of the underground Akademgorodok is unknown. Scientific institutes continue to operate, but there is no information about the underground part. Perhaps the facilities have been abandoned and are falling into disrepair. Perhaps they are being maintained in working order for critical situations, or perhaps secret research is continuing there, which the public should not know about. Academic science and military development have always gone hand in hand, especially in the USSR. There is no reason to believe that this connection has been severed. The connection between Akademgorodok and the main city is also interesting. The distance of 20 kilometers is not that great. There is a theory that an underground tunnel connects Akademgorodok with the center of Novosibirsk. This tunnel could be used by a closed railway or even motor vehicles. This would provide a fast and secret connection between the scientific center and the city's administrative and political leadership. In the event of war or crisis, such a connection would be critically important. There is no evidence of the existence of such a tunnel. but there are indirect indications. Geologists note soil anomalies on the line between Akademgorodok and the city center. Ground-penetrating radar surveys show the presence of voids at a depth of 30 to 40 meters. Officially, this is explained by natural karst processes, but experts point out that the nature of the voids is more likely to be anthropogenic, that is, man-made. The situation can only be clarified definitively by drilling or excavation, which is practically impossible without permission from the authorities. The underground passages of Akademgorodok remain one of the most intriguing mysteries of Novosibirsk's underground world. Science, secrecy, and the Cold War are all intertwined in the history of this unique place. Perhaps someday, documents will be declassified that will reveal the whole truth about what was created underground in the city of scientists. Official sources provide scant information about underground Novosibirsk. The authorities prefer not to elaborate on this topic, but there is an extensive network of witnesses: builders who worked on underground facilities, diggers who explored abandoned tunnels, and ordinary citizens who stumbled upon strange finds. Their stories form an alternative history of the underground city, one that is more complete and reliable than the official version. Viktor Petrovich, a former builder who worked on civil defense facilities in the 1970s, tells amazing things. His team was involved in the construction of bunkers under various buildings in the city. The work was carried out in strict secrecy. The workers were brought in closed trucks with curtained windows so that they could not determine the exact location of the facility. Special access control measures were in place on the site, and documents were confiscated for the duration of the work. Viktor Petrovich recalls one facility under the city center. It was about 40 meters deep. They descended into the mine in an elevator. At the bottom was a huge hall the size of an aircraft hangar. The walls and ceiling were lined with thick concrete slabs. In the middle of the hall stood metal structures of unknown purpose, either frames for installing equipment or elements of a ventilation system. Several tunnels led off from the hall in different directions. The workers were forbidden to enter the tunnels. Their task was only to concrete the floor and walls of the main hall. But once, out of curiosity, Viktor looked into one of the tunnels. It stretched into the distance, lit by sparse light bulbs. Pipes and cable trays ran along the walls. After a few dozen meters, the tunnel branched off. Viktor does not know how many tunnels led away from the hall, but according to his estimate, it was an extensive system capable of connecting many points in the city. Another witness is Alexei, a member of the digger movement since the early 2000s. His group has explored dozens of underground sites in Novosibirsk. Alexei has compiled an unofficial map of the underground based on his own observations and the testimonies of other diggers. According to his data, the tunnel system stretches under the entire city center. The main junctions are located under the Opera and Ballet Theater, the train station, the regional administration buildings, and the city hall. Alexei talks about his most memorable exploration. His group found the entrance to a tunnel in the basement of an abandoned building on Lenin Street. The tunnel led towards Lenin Square. After walking about a kilometer, they came to a fork. One passage led further towards the square, the other turned towards the river. The group decided to go to the square. After another half-kilometer, the path was blocked by a massive metal door. There was a sign on the door: "Restricted area. No entry." The door was locked with several locks. Alexei tried to peek through a crack in the door. Behind it, he could see a lighted corridor. This meant that the lights were on. The facility was either operational or at least being maintained. The group decided not to take any chances and turned back. But this incident convinced Alexei that part of underground Novosibirsk was actively being used. By whom and for what purpose is an open question. Perhaps by the special services, perhaps by the military, or even by closed scientific organizations. Maria Ivanovna, an elderly resident of the city center, tells a family story. Her father worked for the NKVD in the 1930s and 1940s. He never talked about his service, but before his death in the 1970s, he shared his memories. He said that there was a whole network of tunnels under the city, built for the evacuation of the leadership and the transport of prisoners. The bodies of those who had been shot were taken through these tunnels to the river and thrown into the water. Maria Ivanovna's father participated in these operations and suffered from remorse for the rest of his life. The testimony of random eyewitnesses is also important. In 2012, during repairs to the water pipeline on Krasny Prospect, workers broke through the wall of an underground collector and discovered a spacious tunnel behind it. The tunnel was about 3 meters high, with brick-lined walls. The tunnel went in both directions and had no lighting. The workers reported their discovery to their superiors. Representatives of certain agencies arrived at the site, prohibited further investigation, and ordered the hole to be bricked up. One of the workers, Sergei, managed to take several photos with his cell phone. The photos show a typical Soviet-built underground tunnel. On the wall, there is a sign with faded lettering that is difficult to read. Direction, object number 7. What object number 7 is unknown. Perhaps it is the code name for one of the key structures of the underground system. Diggers are trying to systematize the information. Internet forums are being created where they exchange findings, maps, and photographs. Gradually, a picture is emerging. Underground Novosibirsk is a multi-level system of different periods of construction. The lower levels, the deepest and oldest, date back to the 1930s and 1940s. The middle levels were built in the 1950s and 1960s. The upper levels are more recent, dating back to the 1970s and 1980s. The system continued to develop until the collapse of the USSR. Of particular interest are reports of recent activity. Several diggers independently reported encountering people in closed sections of the underground. They were dressed in civilian clothes, but were clearly military or special service personnel. When encountered, these people demanded that they leave the area immediately and warned of serious consequences in case of repeated intrusion. This indicates that some of the facilities are guarded and in use. There is a theory that after the collapse of the USSR, control over underground facilities passed to the FSB and the Ministry of Defense. Facilities of strategic interest remained on the balance sheet and continue to be maintained. Others were abandoned. Still others were transferred to commercial structures or municipal services, but there is no information about the complete list of facilities and their status. The authorities are in no hurry to disclose this information. The testimonies of builders and diggers are living history, passed down by word of mouth. Each story adds a detail to the overall picture. And although many stories cannot be verified by documents, their totality is convincing. There really is an extensive system of underground structures under Novosibirsk, created during the Soviet era and still partially functioning today. Unraveling all the mysteries requires access to secret archives, which is unlikely to be granted in the foreseeable future. The individual tunnels and bunkers are impressive in themselves, but even more striking is the idea that they are all connected into a single system. Underground Novosibirsk is not a collection of disparate objects, but a planned network of communications that provides interaction between key points in the city. How exactly is this system organized? Is there a central control node? What communication technologies were and are used? Let's try to reconstruct the architecture of the underground network. The central hub of the entire system, apparently, is the bunker under the Opera and Ballet Theater. The main trunk tunnels diverge from it. The first leads to the Novosibirsk Glavny railway station in the east, providing an evacuation route and connection to the railway network. The second tunnel goes to the banks of the Ob River in the north, providing access to water and a possible river escape route. The third tunnel leads to the regional administration and city hall buildings, connecting the command bunker with administrative structures. Branches lead off from these main tunnels to secondary facilities. Bomb shelters under residential buildings, storage facilities, and shelters under industrial enterprises are all connected to the common network. This architecture provides flexibility and redundancy. Even if some of the tunnels are destroyed, the system will continue to function via alternative routes. This is a classic principle of critical infrastructure design. The depth of the tunnels varies. The main arteries are laid at a depth of 30 to 50 meters, which provides protection from direct bomb hits. Secondary tunnels and connecting corridors are located at a shallower depth of 15 to 20 meters. This is a compromise between security and construction costs. The shallowest levels are the basements of buildings, which, if necessary, are connected to deeper levels via shafts and stairways. Ventilation is a critical element of the system. Without a supply of fresh air, people would not be able to stay underground for long periods of time. Ventilation shafts, disguised as ordinary technical structures, are scattered throughout the city. They supply air from the surface to the tunnels and bunkers. Filtration systems clean the air of radioactive particles and chemical contaminants. Powerful fans create excess pressure to prevent contaminated air from entering. Power is supplied by autonomous diesel generators located in special rooms. Fuel reserves are stored in underground tanks. The calculation was based on several months of autonomous operation. Redundancy is critical. At least 2 generators are installed at each large facility. If one fails, the second automatically turns on. In addition, there is a backup connection to the city power grid via hidden cable lines. Water is supplied from underground reservoirs. Water is pumped from the surface and purified. Supplies are regularly replenished to prevent stagnation. The drainage system collects used water and sewage, which is pumped to the surface or discharged into the river through hidden pipelines. Autonomy of water supply is critical for long-term human habitation underground. Communication between facilities is provided by wired lines. In Soviet times, telephone and telegraph systems laid in tunnels were used. The cables are protected by metal boxes and shielded from electromagnetic interference. This ensures reliable communication even in the event of a nuclear explosion, which creates a powerful electromagnetic pulse. Modern digital communication systems may have replaced the old analog ones, but the principle remains the same. Wired connections are more reliable than radio communications. Command posts are equipped with situation rooms with maps and diagrams. In Soviet times, large paper maps were used on the walls to mark the current situation. Now, electronic displays and computer systems are probably installed. Operators monitor the status of all network objects, control life support systems, and coordinate the actions of personnel. In the event of a crisis, the command post becomes the brain of the entire underground system. The security and access control system prevents unauthorized entry. All tunnel entrances are equipped with heavy metal doors with combination locks. CCTV cameras record any movement. Sensors detect attempted break-ins. Security guards are on duty at critical points, ready to use their weapons. After the collapse of the USSR, this system may have deteriorated at abandoned sites, but it undoubtedly still functions at operational sites. Integration with above-ground infrastructure provides a link between the underground and above-ground worlds. Hidden entrances in residential buildings, office buildings, and industrial facilities allow people to quickly descend underground in case of an emergency. Elevators and escalators speed up the movement of large groups of people. A warning system using loudspeakers and sirens alerts people to the need to take shelter. Regular drills keep the population ready for evacuation. There is a theory that the underground system in Novosibirsk is connected to similar systems in other Siberian cities. Intercity tunnels are a technically complex but feasible task. Such tunnels were built in the USSR to connect strategically important facilities. If this is true, then there is an extensive transport network under Siberia that allows people to travel long distances while remaining invisible. It sounds fantastic, but the scale of underground construction in the USSR makes such a possibility conceivable. The current state of the communication system is unknown. Some of the facilities have undoubtedly been abandoned, and the systems there are no longer functioning. But strategically important nodes are probably being maintained in working order. Modernizing equipment, replacing outdated systems with modern ones, and training personnel all require funding, which is allocated from closed budget items. Underground Novosibirsk remains a reserve in case of a global crisis. More than 80 years have passed since the construction of the first underground facilities in Novosibirsk began. Much has changed during this time. The Soviet Union collapsed, the Cold War ended, and the threat of global nuclear conflict receded. But the underground infrastructure has not gone anywhere. What is happening to it today? Which facilities continue to function and which have been abandoned? Is the underground city being used for its intended purpose, or has it become a historical artifact? Officially, there are 324 bomb shelters in Novosibirsk. Their total capacity is 215,000 people. These are the figures from the Ministry of Emergency Situations for 2025. The bomb shelters are managed by various organizations, including housing and utility services, industrial enterprises, and budgetary institutions. By law, they must be maintained in a state of readiness for use. Regular inspections, equipment audits, and population evacuation drills are conducted. Reality often falls short of requirements. Many bomb shelters are in poor condition. Ventilation systems do not work. There are no water or food supplies, and the premises are flooded or littered with rubbish. The responsible organizations do not have the funds to maintain the facilities. Inspections are carried out formally, and violations are not remedied. In the event of a real threat, a significant portion of bomb shelters will be unsuitable for sheltering people. But not all facilities are in such a state. Bomb shelters under strategically important buildings are maintained in working order. The buildings of the regional administration, City Hall, FSB office, and military structures have their own shelters with autonomous life support systems. Access to them is closed to outsiders, and information is classified. These facilities are ready for use at any time. The Novosibirsk metro continues to function as a transportation system, but its role as a shelter system is also relevant. In 2022, against the backdrop of an escalating international situation, the city authorities conducted exercises to evacuate the population to the metro. Several thousand people practiced their actions in response to an air raid siren. Metro stations were closed with airtight doors, and autonomous systems were activated. The drills showed that the metro is capable of accommodating and sheltering tens of thousands of people. Industrial enterprises associated with the defense complex maintain their underground facilities. Aviation plants, electronics companies, and instrument-making factories have protected production facilities. In the event of war or crisis, production can be partially moved underground. This ensures the continuity of production of critical products. Information about the readiness of these facilities is not published, but indirect signs indicate their functionality. Akademgorodok continues its scientific activities. Institutes of nuclear physics, biology, chemistry, and information technology are working on fundamental and applied problems. Some of the research has a dual purpose. It can be used for both civilian and military purposes. Akademgorodok's underground laboratories probably continue to operate as part of classified programs. Only specialists with special clearance have access to them. The railway station remains the largest transport hub. The underground facilities are used for technical purposes, to house equipment, warehouses, and service rooms. But there are closed areas whose purpose is unknown. Perhaps they house transport security command posts, special equipment warehouses, and communications centers. In the event of a crisis, the station could become a center for coordinating evacuations and cargo transportation. The bunker under the Opera and Ballet Theater is the biggest mystery. It is not officially recognized by the authorities. The theater continues to operate, staging performances and welcoming audiences. Theater employees do not talk about the underground facilities. However, isolated leaks of information indicate that the facility is being maintained. The ventilation systems are operational, and the underground lakes are regularly inspected. This suggests that the bunker is not just a historical monument, but an active reserve facility. In the 2000s, Russia resumed its civil defense programs. Funds are being allocated to modernize bomb shelters, train the population, and create humanitarian aid reserves. Novosibirsk, as a city with a population of over 1 million and an industrial center, is on the priority list. Work is underway to restore abandoned facilities, build new shelters, and modernize the warning system. This is practical preparation for possible crises, whether military conflict, man-made disasters, or natural disasters. The commercial use of underground spaces is also developing. Stable temperature and humidity make them attractive for storing goods. Wine cellars, food warehouses, document archives, all of this is located in former bomb shelters and basements. Some entrepreneurs have converted underground spaces into restaurants, nightclubs, and sports halls. This gives abandoned facilities a second life, and brings income to the city. The tourist potential of underground Novosibirsk is practically untapped. Unlike European cities, where catacombs and underground passages have become popular tourist attractions, access is closed in Novosibirsk. The authorities cite safety concerns. However, there are unofficial tours organized by diggers. For a fee, they take visitors through accessible parts of the underground. This is illegal and dangerous, but there is demand. People want to see the hidden part of the city's history. The future of underground Novosibirsk is uncertain. On the one hand, the facilities are aging and require repair and modernization. Without investment, they will gradually fall into disrepair and become unusable. On the other hand, the geopolitical situation is unstable. New threats may require the use of underground infrastructure. Perhaps a decision will be made to carry out a large-scale reconstruction of the system. Or perhaps the underground city will slowly sink into oblivion, turning into gloomy ruins beneath the feet of city dwellers. One thing is certain: underground Novosibirsk exists. It is not an urban legend, but reality. Kilometers of tunnels, dozens of bunkers, hundreds of bomb shelters. All of this has been created and continues to exist. Some of the facilities are operational, some are abandoned, and some are shrouded in mystery. And until the authorities disclose all the information, the mystery of the underground city will continue to stir the imagination of researchers and history buffs. Despite decades of research, many mysteries of underground Novosibirsk remain unsolved. The authorities continue to remain silent about key facilities. The archives are classified, access to the most important structures is closed, and the more facts are discovered, the more questions arise. What is really hidden in the depths beneath the city? What secrets are yet to be revealed? The main unsolved mystery is the true scale of the underground system. Known facilities, bomb shelters, metro stations, building basements are just the tip of the iceberg. How many kilometers of tunnels have been laid under the city? What is the total area of the underground facilities? Estimates range from 50 to 200 kilometers of tunnels. The spread is huge, which indicates a lack of accurate data. Perhaps even the authorities do not have the full picture, as many facilities were built by different departments without any coordination. The second mystery is the existence of Stalin's bunker. The legend has been passed down from generation to generation, and circumstantial evidence is mounting, but there is no direct confirmation. If the bunker exists, what condition is it in? Has the original equipment been preserved? Was it modernized in the post-Stalin era? And most importantly, is it in use today? Perhaps it is a backup command post for regional or even federal leadership in case of an emergency. The third mystery is the underground railway. The rails have been found, there are witnesses, but the full picture is missing. Where do these tracks lead? Do they really connect the theater with the train station? Are there other branches leading to industrial facilities, military bases, or other cities? Is this railway still in operation today, or have the rails long since rusted and become overgrown? Answers to these questions would help us understand the true structure of the underground transport network. The fourth mystery is the NKVD execution chambers and the burial sites of victims of repression. Several sites of mass executions have been officially recognized, but many researchers believe that not all of them have been discovered. The tunnel to the Ob River, old mines, abandoned wells, all of these could have been used to hide the traces of crimes. How many people died in the torture chambers of the Novosibirsk NKVD? Where do their remains lie? Full disclosure of this tragedy is necessary for historical justice and the memory of the victims. The fifth mystery is the underground tunnels of Akademgorodok. What was actually built there in the 1950s and 1960s? Were they only scientific laboratories, or were there military facilities as well? Were nuclear weapons tested there? Biological weapons developed? Experiments with human consciousness conducted? The Cold War gave rise to the most incredible projects, many of which remain secret to this day. Akademgorodok, as a closed scientific center, was the ideal place for such work. The sixth mystery is the connection with other cities. The theory of intercity tunnels sounds fantastic, but it cannot be completely ruled out. The USSR had the resources to implement grandiose projects. The construction of an underground highway connecting Novosibirsk with Tomsk, Kemerovo, and Barnaul is technically possible. The length of such a tunnel would be hundreds of kilometers, but for strategic purposes, it is justified. Do such tunnels exist? And if so, are they in use today? The seventh mystery is modern activity in the underground. Evidence of encounters with security guards, functioning ventilation systems, and lights in closed tunnels all indicate that someone is using the underground facilities. Who exactly? The FSB, the military, secret scientific organizations, or, as conspiracy theorists claim, are there secret laboratories, testing grounds, even underground cities for the elite in case of an apocalypse? Without access to information, we can only speculate. The eighth mystery is financing. Maintaining underground infrastructure requires enormous funds. Where do they come from? The official budget for civil defense is small and clearly insufficient to maintain the entire system. This means that there are secret expenditures through which secret facilities are financed. Who makes decisions about the allocation of these funds? Which facilities are considered a priority? There is no transparency on these issues. The ninth mystery is plans for the future. Does the state intend to further develop the underground infrastructure? Will new bunkers, tunnels, and shelters be built? Or will the focus shift to modernizing existing facilities? Or perhaps the underground city will gradually be decommissioned as obsolete and unnecessary. Strategic plans are kept secret, but trends in recent years indicate a renewed interest in civil defense. The 10th mystery is the role of underground Novosibirsk in the all-Union system. Moscow had its metro too. Leningrad, Sverdlovsk, and other large cities also built underground systems. Were they connected to each other in a single network? Was there a general plan for the evacuation of the government and its relocation across the country in the event of nuclear war? Novosibirsk, as a backup capital, was supposed to play a key role in this system, but the details remain unknown. Attempts to get answers to these questions are met with a wall of silence. Requests to the FSB archives remain unanswered. Appeals to city authorities yield evasive explanations. Independent researchers are subjected to pressure and persecution. Diggers are detained and fined for illegally entering the sites. Journalists are warned against publishing certain information. It seems that someone is very keen to prevent the truth about underground Novosibirsk from becoming public knowledge. Why all the secrecy? If most of the facilities are abandoned and of no strategic value, why not declassify the information? Perhaps the reason is that part of the system is indeed active and in use. Revealing the full picture would allow a potential enemy to learn about the vulnerabilities of the defense system, or perhaps the authorities fear public reaction. Upon learning about the scale of underground construction and the funds spent on it, citizens may ask uncomfortable questions about the priorities of government spending. Conspiracy theories multiply in an information vacuum. There is talk of underground cities for the select few, where the elite will survive a nuclear war, while ordinary people perish on the surface. Of secret laboratories where inhumane experiments are conducted. Of tunnels used to transport drugs and weapons. There are rumors of underground prisons for political prisoners. Most of these theories have no evidence to support them, but they reflect society's distrust of the authorities and its thirst for hidden truths. The secrets of underground Novosibirsk can only be unraveled if the archives are declassified and access to the sites is granted. This is a matter of political will on the part of the country's leadership. Until such will exists, researchers will continue to gather bits of information, interview witnesses, and study circumstantial evidence. Each new discovery brings us closer to the truth. And perhaps one day, the full picture will be restored. Until then, underground Novosibirsk remains one of the greatest mysteries of Russian history, waiting to be solved.